Hey there, great to see you. I hope your day has started well. I'm John Bradshaw from It Is Written. I want to share something with you that I hope will encourage you today. You and I both know that life is full of challenges, pitfalls, potholes, opportunities to stumble, opportunities to fall. The Christian experience is a marathon and not a sprint. I shouldn't say it's a sprint. It's a marathon and not a sprint. You see, what we want to do is get to the finish line. If you look in Revelation chapter 14, verse 12 says, here is the patience of the saints. It describes God's people as keeping the commandments of God and having the faith of Jesus. Another translation says this calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints. Christianity isn't just about how you start, it's about how you finish. You know, there's a parable Jesus taught where he said that a man asked his son, would you go do this job? The son said, sure, and he didn't go. And the other one said, no, but ultimately he did go. Jesus said, who did his Father's will? Well, it wasn't the one who made the big profession and started well, it was the one who finished well. We want to finish well, but finishing well, sometimes that can be a challenge. Years ago, a New Zealand athlete I happen to hail from, I'm originally from the country of New Zealand, so I'm familiar with the story. A New Zealand athlete was running in what was called, or still called, the British Commonwealth Games. Now, this was years back. It was 1970. I did not watch this myself. But in 1970, Sylvia Potts was running for New Zealand in Edinburgh, Scotland, at the Commonwealth Games. I believe they were held at Murrayfield Stadium, which today is a rugby stadium, probably was then as well. Now, Sylvia wasn't expected to win the 1,500 meters. But she started well, and she did well, and into the home straight. I mean, there were New Zealanders standing on their feet, yelling at their television set, urging Sylvia Potts towards the finish line, because by the time she got halfway or so down the straight, she was in front. With 50 meters to go, it seems like Sylvia was leading 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters to go, and she was leading. What could possibly go wrong, right? I had an uncle who owned racehorses, and one horse didn't do particularly well, but he wondered if it could be a success in hurdle races, jumping fences, on a racetrack. The horse was so far in front, he felt like a genius because he'd trained this wonderful horse. It was going to win his first race by a country mile. My auntie sitting next to him leaned over and said, the only way this horse is not going to win this race is if it falls over and breaks its neck. I'll leave you to figure out what happened in that race. But Sylvia Potts, 30 feet from the finish line, was winning. I mean, you can't lose from there, can you? Did some athlete from Wales or Scotland or England or Canada or Australia just finish like lightning and run her down? No, that's not what happened. Now, I was familiar with this as a kid because as a kid growing up, there was a television commercial featuring sporting bloopers. Somebody threw a javelin right down at their feet. Somebody was doing the pole vault and the pole snapped. This kind of thing, which was designed to be funny, and maybe it was, unless, of course, you were the pole vaulter. And that same ad featured Sylvia Potts. You see, as Sylvia was running, she just got to the end of her endurance. She needed to just carry herself one more step and she'd have been fine. But maybe 2 meters or 6 feet from the finish line, Sylvia's legs looked up at her and said, we're done. And she couldn't will herself any further. Sylvia Potts fell to the ground 6 feet short of the line, her head falling about 3 feet from gold. She would have won a gold medal if she'd been able to take one, or at most 2 more steps. But instead, Sylvia won nothing. She did not come first, second, or third, or fourth. She was passed by those athletes I mentioned from Wales and Scotland and England and Australia and even another runner from New Zealand. I'm certainly not being critical of her. She was a wonderful human being by all accounts. She died some years ago. You can actually watch this for yourself on YouTube. You can Google Sylvia Potts, Edinburgh, 1970, and she fell to the ground and could not win. She didn't finish strong. Well, let me share something with you. Daniel, in the book of Daniel, was in the worst possible situation. They'd passed a bogus law saying that anyone who was worshiping had to worship the king. Worship anybody else, and we feed you to lions. Well, you know how the story ended, I'm almost certain. Daniel didn't get fed to lions. He did obey God, mind you. As a matter of fact, in reading from Daniel chapter 6 and verse 10, the Bible says, "Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house. His windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God." What did he do? He went home where they could find him. He went into his bedroom. They would know where to look. The windows were open. They could see through the windows. He knelt down on his knees. He certainly wasn't laying down to sleep or just sitting down and relaxing. He faced Jerusalem. So they weren't thinking, well, he's praying to the king down there in downtown Babylon. And he didn't do it once. The king might have convinced his counselors, oh, lighten up. It was just a one-time slip up. It wasn't twice. He'll learn 3 times a day. Daniel was breaking the law, fully cognizant of what he was doing, knowing full well that there was an appointment waiting for him in a den of lions. He would have ended up a lion's lunch. What gave Daniel that inner strength, that intestinal fortitude to obey God when everything hung in the balance? What was it? Well, I shall tell you. I'll read that verse again, except this time I'll finish the verse. "Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime." That's what this version says. You might read in a Bible where it says something like, just like he always did. You see, when the trying time came for Daniel, Daniel didn't have to stroke his chin, scratch his head and say, well, what's the right way to act here? Because he'd been acting the same way all of his life. In his trials and in his joys, he got on his knees and he prayed to God. So that when something really drastic occurred in his life, he was in the habit and he knew what to do. You will be tried today. And you will be tried severely sometime soon. And I'm not a prophet of doom. That's just how life goes. There'll be a tremendous disappointment or some kind of moral conundrum, or somebody will let you down, or you'll let yourself down. What do? Follow Daniel's example. If you make it your business to spend time with God every day, then when things get really difficult in your life, that'll be your default reaction. He prayed. I'm certain he read his Bible. That's what he always did. Get into that habit so that when challenges challenge you, you'll know what to do because you'll do what you always did. Hey, God bless you. Have a great day today.